Please enjoy this message from David Arquette sent in by the fabulous Carrie Tenney.
Hey Ryan, how are you? Thanks for doing the Scream podcast.
Like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Curly, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I couldn't be more grateful for everybody out there who listens to the show, who supports my podcast here, listening every episode, or on social media on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. If you would like to become a member of the podcast, come to the group Zooms, be on the show on a one-on-one or small group setting, consider joining the Patreon with Scream with Ryan C. Showers. In addition to the benefits of coming on the podcast, you can also join our social media groups, in particular on Instagram. That's the main hub of the podcast. I also do a monthly audio commentary of a Scream movie or a Scream-related film. From now through April, we are going to be having a new Scream movie audio commentary. So if you would like to hear my thoughts in an audio commentary form in the style of Wes Craven, Marion Maddalena, et al. Of the original trilogy, please consider subscribing and supporting the show. Thank you to every single person out there who subscribes on Patreon. So I need to thank TJ Jones, who does all of the graphic design work for the podcast, and Ashley Summers, who helps me produce the show every week. In addition, I need to thank everybody over at Patreon, including the Stab Investors and Daddy Ghostfaces. The Daddy/Mama Ghostfaces, they include Carrie Tenney, Corey Wilson, Andrew Dominguez, and Brett Janovich. I also need to thank all of my Stab investors. They include Amar Karim, Josh Carr, Ali, Tamika Jones, Christian Ranke, David D., Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Nabrini, aka The Vault, John Cardney, Josh Camillari, Scream Queens Podcast, both Josh and Justine, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Roy Garza from the Hoodie Talks podcast, Ryan Not Dying Young, Sam Levy, and Stevie Shears. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Welcome to episode 303, 03303. Welcome to this episode. So we are continuing on with our limited series run of instant reaction reviews of Scream 7. So originally this was supposed to be a 4-episode limited series on the podcast, but I'm extending it to a 5th episode. So basically I had the option of either doing 4 episodes, 2 of them longer, like episode 303 and 304 would have been longer, or I could extend and have 3 shorter episodes. So I'm opting for that one. So this episode is actually going to be just me and Amar. It was the longest limited segment we did before I left for my vacation here. And it's a very interesting conversation, especially because, Amar is such a staple of the podcast, right? But also Amar's reaction is not what you would expect. Please note, this was recorded when Amar had seen the film just once. So I've seen it 3 times now. He has seen it multiple times at this point. So this is kind of an out-of-date take in some ways, but it's also, I think, just a good time capsule to look at, just as a snapshot of like where someone like Amar, who is a huge Scream person, who's a part of the podcast and like really has a smart Scream thinking head on his shoulders, where he was at whenever he first saw it. So I have to say, I think like Scream 7 kind of exposed like me and Amar almost being like at the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of like this is the farthest away I felt from Amar in terms of our opinion, basically since we became friends back in 2010, whenever I was trying to convince him that Scream 3 was actually great. So, but it's an interesting discussion. So I hope everyone enjoys, but also take this as like, if you've only seen Scream 7 once, I implore you to go again. Like, I think that this discussion shows and underlines why it's important to see Scream 7 more than once, especially for longtime fans who are so used to a specific type of formula. And I think like if there is a difference between the way that general audiences are reacting in a positive way versus longtime Scream fans. I think it comes down to expectation. And again, because Kevin is doing a different style of Scream movie, the general audience doesn't care so much. They're just along for the ride versus, Scream fans. It's taking a bit for some of us to adjust, but I've not heard from a single person who saw the movie more than once who hated the movie or thought like it got worse on the second time. I've only heard the opposite. I've only heard that people love Scream 7 more as they see it more than once. So please go see it this weekend. So we are finishing up the first week of the theatrical run. We've all been living with this movie for a week, and it's still kind of settling in our brains. Like, I don't think that we're going to have a full grasp on what this movie is in terms of the Scream larger picture until probably the end of March, beginning of April. It's going to take a while for it just to settle in because, we're so close to the first 6 movies. Like, they're a really intimate part of at least my life. So, it's all about settling in. So I want to go through a couple of things before we get to the Amar segment. First and foremost, we need to celebrate the box office. So the first week of box office basically couldn't have gone any better for Scream 7. It had an overwhelming successful achievement in that Scream is now a billion-dollar franchise. Scream was really close with Scream 6 to making it to that billion-dollar mark at the worldwide box office, of course, and it didn't make it quite there. But, after the first weekend of Scream 7, I think technically it was on Monday that it crossed the threshold from, $1 million to $1 billion franchise. So Scream has now joined the elite group of franchises that have grossed more than $1 billion at the worldwide box office. And Scream's cool because there's only 7 movies of Scream, where other franchises, they're factoring in dozens of movies, not, 10 plus, right? So we still have 7 films, which is really cool. So anyways, but, Scream is in really good shape. So as of right now, as of Friday, March 6th, it's sitting at 73 million for the domestic box office run and 110 worldwide. An interesting thing about this is Scream 7 is going to most likely cross the 100 million at the domestic box office this coming weekend for the second weekend. So some projections have it as low as 20 to 25. Others have it between 25 and 33. So who knows? My hope is that once again, Scream 7 will defy the odds. It's up against some stupid, Pixar movie, Disney movie, doesn't matter. But what's it called? Stoppers? Who cares? It will probably be number 2, which is that. I wanted it to be number 1 for more than 1 week. Maybe it will be for next week. Who knows? It's also up against The Bride, which is another kind of artsy fartsy kind of horror movie. Blah. Who cares? The reviews aren't very good. Not that the reviews matter, but I've just noticed on social media that people aren't loving The Bride. To be honest, I did not love the trailer for it. I think it looks silly. I love Christian Bale. He's one of my favorite actors, but man, I don't. I literally don't care. I don't care about anything else but Scream right now. But the really cool thing about the Scream box office is I have the optimistic hope that it's not going to be as huge of a drop as some are expecting. Some are expecting it to be a 65% drop from weekend 1 to weekend 2. I'm thinking more along the lines of 50 to 60, somewhere in there, which would be really great. So that would put its opening weekend at about, more so in the low 30 range, right? My hope and prayer would be that Scream 7 is able to top the Scream 6 record for the domestic box office here in the second weekend. So that would be crossing 108 million. If it doesn't cross it the weekend, it'll cross it on Monday or Tuesday. So it doesn't matter. Scream 6 is going down. It's just a matter of time in both the domestic and the worldwide. It's not going to be, so looking at the box office right now, the worldwide box office is 110 million. The record I think is held by Scream 1. Scream 1 and 2 both have 173 million worldwide. That's doable. We're 60 million away from that. It's probably going to make 60 million more just in the United States alone. Here's an interesting question. What will the final box office run be? I don't know. My wish would be that it would top Halloween 2018 for because that has the record now for the highest grossing slasher of all time. Before, it was held by Scream. So before 2018, it was the first 3 Scream movies. And then Halloween 2018 came along and changed that. So Halloween 2018 had 159 million domestic, 259 worldwide. See, I look at this and I think that Scream can top the 159 domestic box office. We'll see, maybe not. Maybe it will really be just front loaded and it will set the record for the highest in the franchise, but not, whatever. Regardless, this, it seems as though it's going to come in under Halloween 2018 for the second highest grossing slasher of all time, no matter what. So just to wrap up this discussion of the box office, I think it's so amazing that Scream is a billion-dollar franchise. I'm proud of these movies. I'm proud of, not only the work of Kevin Williamson and Neve Campbell here, but I'm really proud of the work by Wes Craven all those years ago, because, that was the beginning of all of this. It's amazing, with the exception of Scream 4, just how consistent the money has been throughout the franchise. So it's very cool. Congrats to Scream on 1 billion smackaroons. So, okay. Next, I want to go through, I made this post on social media, and I'm actually quite proud of it. So it did not start out this way. And actually I wanted to make a post basically saying Scream 7 is greater than Scream 6. And I was just going to have the basic graphic of like the poster of 7, greater sign, the poster of 6. And it turned into this big other thing. I was like, but maybe I should explain why, because people are dumb. So here it was what I wrote on Scream 7 restored so much about the franchise for me after the disappointing Scream 6 with the following redeeming qualities. Okay, here we go. The obvious recentering of Sidney Prescott, actually giving Gale earned character development, allowing Mindy to be likable and shine. A heroic main character is better than a morally gray one. Imagine that. A great acting performance from the Ghostface actor, an original motive that isn't repetitive, powerful emotion and expert dialogue, subtle homages, not empty Easter eggs, natural Evans family unit is greater than the forced Core 4 unit. I really stand by that. Epic opening scene that went off without a hitch, effortless acting from the younger new lead. I don't care if that's shade, fingernail emoji. Okay, let's see. Cinematography, score, and setting felt like Scream, showing new and complicated sides of Sidney and Gale as opposed to writing them one-dimensionally, respecting the legacy instead of running away from it. Goes without saying, but victims of Ghostface who actually had names and were part of the main cast, bonus points for incredible visuals in the death scenes, a full soundtrack with original songs as opposed to the one single. And, I just prefer Scream 7 in every single way. It's just superior, basically, in every respect. I mean, it's easy to say, like, your preference and your subjective thoughts, right? But I think when you actually iron things out like that, like it's hard. And here's the thing: as people were commenting back at me, because of course, this post got a lot of attention on social media and a lot of comments. One person commented and said, "Well, you should add in here that if a character is stabbed, fatally, that they actually die," which is true. But a lot of people agreed with me. Some people came out and said, "Oh, this is the typical crap." Whenever they would say things, I would be like, "Well, so tell me why." The comment would be like, "Oh my God, Scream 6 is so much better than 7." I'm like, "Well, tell me why. What on my list don't you agree with?" And no one wants to actually address the substance here. It's all about just vibes and whatever. But it's hard to argue with this list. I think I stand by every point, and I don't really see what about Scream 6 is over Scream 7 that compares to my points here. So, anyways, okay. Next up, I want to just briefly talk about Scream 8 because there are a lot of rumblings about Scream 8. I have to say, I'm not really focused on Scream 8 this time. After Scream 5 and Scream 6, I was both focused on what comes next. And I am really proud of myself that I am not being that guy. I'm not jumping to Scream 8 speculation. I'm really just enjoying the moment. Because again, I've meant it, over the past couple of weeks, I've said like, what if this is the last time that Neve Campbell is the lead? What if this is the last time Sidney Prescott is the number one main character? And I'm like, we have to soak up every single second of it. And that I've done. I haven't even been thinking about Scream 8, but other people have. We're going to get it. It's coming soon. I expect we'll get an announcement probably like the middle to end of March. So I remember this vividly because I actually literally recorded with Radio Silence the day of the announcement for Scream 6 after Scream 5. So like 2 to 3 weeks after the release of Scream 5. So I'm kind of basing it there. So imagine we'll get you can probably guess that the Scream 8 announcement is going to come around the time that Ready or Not 2 is released on March 20th. I'm guessing sometime that week or the week after. So, and I'm excited because my friend Phil volunteered to do the Scream 8 kind of topic for me. So hopefully that episode is going to be coming soon where we kind of talk about a wish list and, whatever. I would love for that to coincide with the announcement, so fingers crossed. But before then, I made this post of Neve and Isabel. I want to just share real quick about what I wrote. My argument would be for Spyglass to greenlight both Scream 8 and 9 with Kevin Williamson, Neve Campbell, Isabel May, and Courtney Cox attached a la Halloween Kills and Ends after Halloween 2018. That would allow for planning, direction, and assurances from the creatives to the fans. While I love Tatum, think Isabel is a fantastic actress and can't wait to see more of her, I also implore Spyglass and Paramount to reflect on the importance importance of Sydney and Nev to the success of Scream 7. Nev carried the marketing on her back while taking all of the personal risk. To sideline Sydney a la Scream 5 or Gale a la Scream 6 would be undercutting what made Scream 7 so financially successful. And according to Deadline, Kevin has, confirmed that Nev has this brilliant idea for Scream 8, and that gives me hope. If Nev had the idea for Scream 8 and she has a good sense of how Sydney could be important to the movie, even if it is a Tatum-led movie, which, I have to say, it's very exciting to have a Tatum-led movie. Like, I feel like Scream 7 did outline her really well. Like, I have a sense of who she is, and I thought Isabel was a great actress. But there's still so much untapped potential of Tatum that we haven't seen yet because this movie was focused on Sydney. So I'm excited to see what Tatum could be like as a lead and a more proper character without Sydney overshadowing her in some respects. So that could be really great. Also, I just want to share, people have commented to me about Kirby. I really do hope that Hayden Panettiere returns for Scream 8. I hope that they ask her. I hope that they write her in. I love her. I think she's a wonderful actress. I think she's a wonderful character in this franchise. Chad Mindy are here as Gale's assistants, and they, I think Hayden and the Scream 4 era deserve that same respect. So that's great. Okay. Let's see. What else? Last thing I'm going to say. So, I've said this on every single review, but I'm going to just outline it here again. This March is International Women's Month, celebrating all my women out there, but especially I want to celebrate Nev and Courtney. I just want to share this post that I made about Nev and Courtney. So I said that Scream 7 delivered one of the best versions of Sidney Prescott and Gale Weathers in the history of the franchise. The film was a redemption for the characters that were neglected by their most recent entries, as well as for Nev Campbell, Courtney Cox, who delivered flawless acting performances. There is a strong argument that Scream 7 is the best iteration of each character, if not at minimum top 3. Nev, Kevin, Courtney, Spyglass, they all delivered on the promise of the Sydney and Gale as a duo too. Fans are so lucky to have this specific movie. So, anyways, guys, thank you for this little introduction here. While I've kind of warmed up everyone for this segment with Amar Karim, I wanted to share one last thing. Over the past year or so, we've talked about the idea of Scream 7 being an event. And Scream 6 felt like an event. And now in retrospect, Scream 6 felt like child's play. It felt like, such a small thing compared to what Scream 7 was in terms of the audience participation, the premiere, the popcorn buckets, the fandom, all of the build up and the hype and the marketing. But also an aspect that is kind of underrated but contributes to this is all of the original songs that were written for Scream 7. Of course, we know Twisting the Knife, which had a huge music video with Ghostface. It was by Ice, 9 Kills. McKenna Grace was featured in it, despite, I feel like she has more time in the song, screen time in the song than she did in the movie, right? But that's funny. So we have that. We have Creepin' by Dawn Tolliver. So this is the song that plays over the cast credits at the end. I've actually really warmed up to the song. I like it. Creepin' on you, creepin' on you. Some people think it's underwhelming and that it should have been Twisting the Knife. I think Twisting the Knife would have been a really overwhelming song, kind of like the one for Scream 5, like Save Yourself All of Love. It would have had that similar vibe. So I think Creepin' is an inspired choice. Of course, we have Rearranging Scars by Suko. I think that was the first single released. We have Criminal, which I'm the least familiar with. That's by Jesse Murph. And my personal favorite from the movie, okay? And these are all songs that are not only in the movie, in the end credits, but also throughout the film. My favorite song from Scream 7 is called The Kill. It's by Stella Lefty. And it's the song that plays whenever, it's the montage going back and forth between Sydney and Tatum, starting their day. Tatum walking to school. She has her AirPods in. She sees the girls. She runs up to them, and then her boyfriend comes up in the car, and we see Sydney walking into the coffee shop. We see her kind of taking off her coat and starting her day. That's the song that plays. It's the chase, the kill, the hunt, the kill. But I love that song, and it's actually kind of starting to be known on social media, and I'm literally using it for every single one of my posts. It's crazy. So oh my god, I want to share this. This is so cool. So Isabel May and Nev Campbell have something else in common besides playing mother and daughter. In the lead up to the release of Scream 7, Nev Campbell was interviewed by TikTokers and whatever else influencers, and she was asked about what her favorite Scream sequel is. And she said specifically, she said Scream 3 first. 3, 2, she said it like that. And I just felt so much validation from that because, again, this whole podcast is built off of Sidney Prescott in Scream 3. That's her best performance. It's the best writing for the character. I would probably even still include Scream 7 in that. I think Scream 3 is better than 7 for Sydney, but that's just my opinion. So I love that Nev said that. Well, So first of all, validation all around, finger snaps all around. And I love that she said that, without any consideration, well, Kevin didn't write 3, so I shouldn't say that. Oh my God, it's not liked by everybody. Oh my God, I shouldn't say that. She just said 3 naturally. So thank you, Nev. Next, Isabel May literally says, she said recently that Scream 3 is also her favorite in the franchise. She said the fact that they fully embraced the campsite is what made me like it so much. It was an interesting reflection on celebrity, fame, and all of that, which is really cool. And no one outdoes Parker Posey. Interesting. And my friend Joanna from the Patreon, she was at the Florida convention with all of the Scream stars last weekend, and she said that McKenna Grace also said that Scream 3 was her favorite sequel of the franchise. And McKenna Grace is really cool. She also said that Scream 7 is one of her favorite sequels in the franchise as well. So I love McKenna Grace being like a 137 girl. That just makes me really happy. So Scream 3, baby, coming around. We're coming around to this is Ryan C. Showers territory. Oh, yeah. We're taking over the world. So, all right, everybody. So I'm actually going to be seeing Scream 7 for the first time in a couple of days this weekend. I'm going down here in Key West, which is really fun. I saw Scream 6 down here in Key West back in 2023. That was the first time I saw that instead of being at home. I guess red flag, right? But I'm really excited to see it again after a couple of days and kind of like, getting work done and like, being on vacation and stuff. So it'll be fun to see it, for the first time in Florida. Cue the Taylor Swift song, Florida, boom, boom, boom. So Florida and Scream 7, it's one hell of a drug. So Florida, boo, 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 boo. Anyways, folks, please enjoy the rest of the episode with me and Amar. And please note, he feels differently now. He's a little warmer to the movie, but his perspective here is still interesting. So cheers, everybody. Hope everyone is having a great, great time with Scream 7 and has a great weekend. I hope you guys go see it again. Let's make it another amazing weekend. Wouldn't it be amazing if Scream 7 made more money at the box office this weekend than Scream 5 did in its opening weekend? Just think about that. Let's make it happen. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for this segment of the podcast. And this is a momentous occasion because in episode 300, listener, just so you know, episode 300 was designed as an episode just for me to do the episode by myself. I didn't really think about the idea that Abby and I would do an instant reaction. So it was kind of poetic, on this big milestone moment that my sister joined me because she was the first guest on the podcast way back in the day. And then the second guest was my friend Michael, who, we won't talk about that episode, but Michael saw Scream 7. He loved it. And now we are coming to the third guest ever of the podcast back in 2021. And yet he's still here. He has been with me every step of this journey. I'm so excited to hear what he has to say. But am I? I don't know. Everyone, please welcome my dear friend, the Michelle Visage to my RuPaul, a reference that this man would never get in a million years, but it's a good one. Amar Karim. Welcome, Amar.
Hello, Mr. Showers. How are you? I've got a smile on my face. You always give me the best introductions, don't you?
Josh Carr he said, everyone needs to find a friend who hypes them up the way that Ryan Showers hypes up the Patreons on the podcast.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with Mr. Carr.
Wow. So, Josh Carr loves Scream 7. So I don't know if that sentiment, I agree with Mr. Carr, will continue on here. So Amar, this is a big day because we have the very first ever Kevin Williamson directed film and Sidney Prescott returning to the leading role, a true restoration of Gail Weathers, in my opinion. And we have the introduction of her family. And I would say the best version of Chad and Mindy we've ever seen so far. At least Mindy. Chad, maybe he's better in Scream 6, but Amar, I'm dying to hear. What are your thoughts?
Right, listen, okay. So when I've seen it once, and as you know, and I've said this every time I see a film, I need to see it at least twice. I couldn't see it again yesterday for whatever reason, so I'm just going on my initial reaction. And when I came out the cinema, there was me, my son, my daughter, and some friends. And my daughter turned around and said to me, she goes, "That's one of the best Scream films I've seen in a long time." She gave it a 9 out of 10. And I looked at her, me and my son looked at each other, and we were like, really? And my son goes, yeah, it's better than I expected, but apparently he had spoilers, I don't know how. I came out and I thought, there's parts of that blew me away, and parts of that I was just so irritated by. So my initial reaction, I remember sending you the message and you were horrified by it. I said, yeah, I think I'm going to put that in chronological order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then yesterday, I was talking to my middle son about the film, and the more I explained stuff to him, the more I realized, actually, I do like it more than I thought I did. So I think for me, or a rewatch is so important. But right now, unfortunately, I'm ranking it like just above 6 and below 5.
Okay, that's kind of shocking. So, Amar, I want to reflect back to the first episode we did for Scream 5.
Mm-hmm.
You were not hot on Scream 5 at the time, and
I was
yet
not.
you rank 7 under 5.
That's correct.
So I really wish that you had had the opportunity to see it again, because I've seen it twice now, and I loved it the first time I saw it, but it was even better the second time, in my opinion. I think that over time your opinion is going to evolve, and Amar and I have a plan to kind of do like very like some cool ideas for Scream 7 episodes over the next couple of weeks and months. So I think that we'll see Amar's opinion and we'll track it as it goes. But it's kind of shocking to me that you came in saying that it's at first you said it was the bottom under 6, which I was ready to get the divorce papers for our friendship. Like, yeah, never again would you appear on the podcast. So tell me more.
Right, okay, disclaimer for everyone listening, right? Ryan knows me as Mr. Elastic, and I accept that. That's who I am, because it just, I don't know, my brain needs to process a lot of things. So much happened in that film. And I said the same thing about 5, actually. When I said to you on the first episode that we did for 5, I said it went by too quick. And I felt like I didn't process a lot of information. Well, Scream 7 is even quicker. I remember you said to me, you love the fact that it's lean. I think it's too lean, right? I just think that Scream 7, it's almost like because they had a different plan, and then obviously Guy Busick wrote the script, and then Kevin Williamson had to come in and change stuff. I feel like it's a little bit, in places, not all of it, a bit underdeveloped. And I feel like they had a choice. It was either let's play with nostalgia or let's play with character development. And they've gone with nostalgia. Now, before you jump at me, I'm going to say Sidney Prescott, Gail Weathers, Tatum, and Mark. Those 4 are perfect.
What about the twins?
No, you see, no. Okay, come on. I was watching.
You are the most negative person so far that I've talked to. I've talked to over 8 people, and you are the only person to have said this. So go on.
Okay, first of all, they're funny. I get that. They have that banter, which they've always had, I guess, from 5 and 6, but it's more so in this one. But I just feel Chad literally does nothing. Literally. Mindy gets a bit more to do. But it was just like, why are they there? How have you joined forces with Gail? When did you ever want to be a reporter? What's the real reason you guys are there? And I would have liked just a little bit more of what their story is. And I just don't buy that those 2 that were in New York with their friends would suddenly want to join Gail. And again, look, listen, this is just my first reaction. I might rewatch it and find something that I missed. But when I first saw that, I was like, really? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that they were there. I do like the twins. But it was just like they've got their little set piece and it's over before it begins for them to.
I severely disagree. Like, this may be like the biggest disagreement we've ever had about a Scream movie ever in history. I disagree because to me, they are so much more than their set piece. Like, yeah, that is probably the biggest moment that they have is in the bar in her speech. In terms of joining Gail, it doesn't surprise me because here's the thing too, this is going to be very real world, but what are they supposed to do? Hang out with Sam and Tara for the rest of their lives? They need jobs. And honestly, I can see Mindy as a media person. She strikes me as the type of person who would be into social media or even reporting. And, if Chad is along for the ride, who knows? I will say, I think Chad is the lesser of the 2 here. Mindy is so good. And I don't think that their inclusion here feels random at all. It feels natural. And I think that the history, it kind of lubricates us to their inclusion here. They have not been with Sidney and Gail a lot before, but to me, they just felt natural being here. And I think it's more about the writing. I think that Mindy and the direction and the execution, usually I find her cringe. The amount of people who disliked Mindy in Scream 6 and her speech and her comedy, and all of it kind of works here. I think it's all about the execution and the tone and the flow. And, here's the key, Amar, that you didn't give consideration to. It's the sibling banter. I think that Sam and Tara, the truth is they held the twins back. So there's twofold. Radio Silence and Guy Busick and James Vanderbilt, they wrote them and executed them kind of in a cringy way. And they were always kind of held back by Sam and Tara. They were limited by Sam and Tara. We went through 2 fucking movies and we never had a scene with them, really just the 2 of them together, talking, bantering. The closest we got was maybe a little flash in the Stumacher house in Scream 5. But the magic of Chad and Mindy here is it's the sibling banter, it's the chemistry between them as siblings, and the back and forth. To me, that was such a needed element, and it's a carry through of 5 and 6 in a respectful way. And it just felt as though that the writing for each of them, especially Mindy, was a little sharper, and Jasmine's approach was able to click with whatever Kevin was giving her to make it not cringy, to make Mindy likable. I found them extremely likable. I mean, Chad was likable in 6 for being a thin character. But, here Mindy is just extraordinarily likable.
No, and I agree with you. Look, I'm being pedantic on purpose here because I've only seen the film once, right? And I know that, I'm not one of those fans that's like, oh, let's crap on this film. No, I've always said this. There is no such thing, for me anyway, as a bad Scream film. Yeah, there's certain films that we might not like the writing for, Scream 6, for example. But I've always loved them all, and I will always want another film. Like, I want a number 8, I want a number 9. With the twins, I agree with what you're saying. The banter between them is fantastic. Even the scene at the end, the end credits, I liked that. I thought it was quite funny. I thought that's what you need to see from twins, especially, because I've heard so much about it. I just felt that if I'm being picky, they could have, just developed the backstory a little bit more. And I felt like Chad was definitely given the lesser role. And I agree. I've always liked Savoy Brown, Jasmine, and I think that I've never found her as cringe as everybody else in 5 and 6. Yes, she's a little annoying, and I get that she isn't here because the writing tones it down. I'm just thinking, could they have given just a bit more? Like you said in Scream 6, like Gail needed maybe a bit more. I just felt that these guys needed a bit more. But like I said, I'm glad that they're there. I'm glad that New York is mentioned so that obviously the previous 2 films aren't like, just shoveled under the carpet or anything. But again, like I said, I might watch it again and think, actually, Ryan's right. This banter is great. They're both really good. But because I felt that the film just went by so quick, I was like, wow, where did that screen time go? Or maybe I was just so enthralled by it. I don't know. I was definitely, there was no moment in this film, right, when I was like, I'm bored or I don't like it. But it's just that there's just certain things that I was like, I need a bit more.
Well, so, and it's fair to say this, this is your opinion and I respect it. I will say that I do disagree with you here about the screen time aspect. I felt like, especially like once Gail arrives with the twins, I felt so full and complete by both the Sydney and Gail, the Chad and Mindy. To me, I almost felt like, and Tatum, everything was balanced so well. And I actually think we got a lot of time with the twins. I think you'll see it on the second rewatch. There's, I bet they have at least 8 scenes. And maybe it doesn't come across because it happens like in a flash.
Yeah.
But, I will say that let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Kevin's approach to the material as the director and like this fast pace. Because I think that like the fast pace is just something, I think it's something that held you up in the first viewing. It's something that caught me very, very off guard. And I think it's catching a lot of people off guard. Yet I think general audiences are enjoying it because we live in a fast paced world. We live in the world of TikTok with the scrolling and the algorithm. But it's much different from Wes's films, which felt very unfolded and, just like plump with detail. And, he took his time with basically everything, in terms of character development and unfolding the plot in scenes and allowing scenes to breathe. And the finales of Wes's films always felt especially long, and here the whole movie is just keeps going, quick. It's just a different approach. I will say, going from first viewing to second viewing, the pace wasn't so abrasive the second time.
Okay. Well, this is, like I said, I mean, every Scream film, except the first one, I've seen in the cinemas at least 4 times. So, I mean, obviously Ramadan and stuff. So I will go, even honestly, if I went into Scream 7 and I came back out and said to you, Ryan, that is the worst film I've ever seen, I would still go back and watch it 4 times because it's Scream. Call me whatever you want for that. People will listen like, well, that's a bit weird. I'm like, no, I'm a fan for a reason. And I want to give this film its due, but I need to watch it a couple of times. But obviously, we're just going to go on my first viewing. So come on, hit me with some more. Yeah.
No, but let's talk more about the pace. Like, I feel like once we get through the opening, I think the opening was kind of normal. So I do know for a fact it's a pretty long Scream opening. It's 13 minutes. I think that's about what Scream 6 was. So I think Scream 7 is the longest, which is crazy because in some ways it does feel a little bit shorter when you're watching it, but not compared to the rest of the film. Once we hit Tatum's bedroom and we meet Sydney and Mark and we go through the motions of everything and we get to the school and the play and then Gail arrives, like it's just like it feels so quick and it's good pacing. I think that's why it's connecting with audiences. That's why it's making $60 million this opening weekend.
Oh, bro, I want it to make its money. I want it to do so well that we have the Screams 8 sooner than, I mean, most people say, yeah, let's wait a couple of years for Scream 8. I'm like, no, give me another one straight away. But I want to ask you a question before we talk about it. If you were to, off the cuff, right now, Scream 7 opening, where would you rank it compared to all the openings?
So there are some people who are surprising me with this. Some people are saying this is easy top 3. I liked it a lot. Oh, let's go from the bottom. So 6, 4, 5. It's better than 5. The opening of 5 has really taken a dip for me recently just because it's kind of boring. It's kind of basic, despite Jenna's performance, which again, there's only so much you can do when your entire opening is just about a single performance because there's no action in that either. So I would go 5. I guess it would be 1, 2, 3, 7, 5, 4, 6. I don't know, but it could be better than 3. I'm not sure yet. It's more epic than 3, but 3 is the West directed sequence. So I guess the middle. How about you?
Okay, I go 1, 2, 7.
Ooh,
really,
good.
I really,
Tell me about
honestly,
it.
bro. When I watched that opening, it set the tone so well for the rest of the film. You know, I've told you before that when my kids go to the cinema and they watch like an animated film and they're so engrossed in it that they literally levitate. I was levitating in that opening. Like I was just like, how have you managed to? Because I thought everything about his direction was fantastic. I didn't think it was too gimmicky. I thought it was great. I didn't even realize that Ghostface had changed from the animatronic, and only until I think he's called Scott, right? He turns around and the only thing I didn't like about the opening was the CGI death. Like, because it looks CGI. But I don't know. Maybe on the second viewing it'll look better. But I thought, I don't even know who the actress is. I've never seen that actress before anywhere. And I thought she was fantastic in it.
And can I just say the guy in that, his name's Jimmy Tatro, and the woman's name is Michelle Randolph in real life. And I really like him. And rarely do I ever like the second person, like the secondary person, more than the first person. Like, you know, it's always, of course, like everyone likes Jada Pinkett more than they like Omar Epps. Everyone likes Liev Schreiber more than they like Kelly Rutherford. But here, Jimmy Tatro, I found his approach to the character to be so normal, like a normal guy, a normal fan, a human being. Like there wasn't anything put on about him. I really, really liked him, I have to say.
No, I liked him a lot. He was very goofy, very nerdy, literally what we would be like if we went to Stu Mocker's house, right? If I took my girlfriend or wife or whatever, I would be like that. What I loved about it was the fact that she didn't want to be there. And it was so normal. The character was very normal because he even said, you go, look, if you don't want to be here, let's just go. And she's like, oh, you do that for me. And I loved that. She was like, no, I don't want to be here, but you know, for you, I'm going to stay. And I thought the phone call was great. You know, Ghostface didn't even beat it around the bush. He literally went straight in for, I'm going to kill you sort of thing. And I just thought, wow, this is really good. And I love that the trailer doesn't, well, it kind of does give a lot away, but it's still longer in this than the trailer depicts. And I was just like, okay, that surprised me. I loved the conversation about Stu Mocker. Like, is he, isn't he? Because that's obviously what the rest of the film kind of shows you. So for me, the opening it was fresh, it was delicious, and it was brutal. And yeah, and I love that Ghostface just looked like he meant business. I think what 4, 5, 6, and 7 especially have done that the first 3 films maybe didn't do was really put Ghostface like this menacing, almost Michael Myers type figure.
Ghostface in the original trilogy was a bit more, and I don't want to say secondary to Sidney and Gale and Dewey, but he was, you know, he was definitely secondary to the story. And what they've done in the, post the original trilogy is trying to make him a pop culture icon. And it's been effective. I mean, I will give Radio Silence that, like, they made incredible visuals for Ghostface in their films.
Yeah.
And here I think it continues, and like that shot of Ghostface whenever he lights the match and then throws it and then it kind of lights up in front of his face. Oh
Yeah.
my God, like that, to me that was like, wow, that's like Ghostface is back. And you mentioned the fact that this is at Stu Macher's house. And, for me, I actually, there was concern about like, would this be relevant? Would this feel like a too isolated of an opening when the rest of the movie is set in, on the other side of the country and it's not really talked about after? And for me, I see that argument, but I disagree with it because what they're literally in Stu's house. This is a story about Stu being alive and not being alive. And for me, I think that it was just good to kind of be there, have that moment, have that suspicion. Maybe Stu Macher, if he would have been alive, would have burned down his house. Who knows? So I think that it was a good choice. What are your thoughts about that?
No, and I agree with you because I think originally when I was watching, I was like, okay, this is not really mentioned. Remind me though, doesn't Gale mention?
She does. So she does bridge, the opening to the rest of the story. And because here's the other thing too. Like, one, I think that it's good, to make an argument, like whether you're in court, whether you're at your job, you have to summarize the facts in the past. And I think that's what Kevin is doing here. Stu Macher, he had a TV fall on his head, but is he alive? Question mark. Yeah, so they were doing that. But also, if this would have happened in Pine Grove, let's just say McKenna Grace would have been the opening kill, kind of like a Drew Barrymore situation, it would have changed the tone of the entire first act, and we wouldn't have been able to properly see Sydney.
Completely, and I agree, and I think I know that's why they did it. But what I like about it is that, like you said, Gale bridges that, and it kind of obviously pumps Gale to get there as well. So I thought the opening, honestly, I really did. I think it's my third favorite opening, and I like Scream 5's opening. I like Scream 3's opening. I'm not so hot on 4 and 6, as you know, but yeah, right now I would say that it's my third favorite opening.
Well, you know what? I'll amend, and I'll just say it's mine too.
Yeah.
Because I love the Scream 3 opening for all of the things, but the visuals in the opening of Scream 7 are pretty amazing. Not even just the fire. The fire, of course, is the money shot at the end, but even like the opening of them, like of the car driving up to the house, I thought the house looked pretty great. I can tell it's not Santa Rosa, but it looks very detailed and much like what we knew from the original. And I noticed the details and the nuances more here than I ever did with Amber Freeman.
The Amber Freeman one didn't look, very good now that you look back at it. But, just to complement the opening, and honestly, I thought it was still the Paramount logo. And I realized, it's the stars in the actual scene that it's merged into. And I was like, wow, that is a great transition.
Did you hear the music?
Yeah, I did. Of course I did. I was like, you know what, Marco Beltrami, yeah? Obviously, he's got some of the original score back, so it's very nostalgic, but why they didn't continue using him for the rest, I just don't know, because he's just a genius at every scene. I will say that every single scene in this film that needed the right music had the right music at the right time, so... Yeah.
Well, and the score here is very, very different, and I need to listen to the score by itself. I'm still processing. Whenever I'm watching the movie, I'm so into the movie, I'm not even really thinking about the score. It's a different approach to a Scream score that we've ever had. I need to sit with it more. I do like it, and it will be interesting to analyze it compared to the other scores. It's not the original trilogy for me, but it's something different. It's something emotional and good. But going back a little bit, you referenced that you thought that Sydney's family and Gale were all done perfectly. Why don't you tell me about that?
So, okay, before the film came out, I remember there was this one trailer that said like mother, like daughter, or mother and daughter something. And I agree, the mother and daughter aspect is great. It really is. But for me, what surprised me was the emotional anchor in this, there were two bits, was Gale and Sydney. I have never thought that a Scream film would bring them two together in such... I know they hugged in 3 and they're close in 4 and they were really good together in 5, but there was stuff here, and I want to, I think maybe it was Kevin that's done this, obviously, because he knows the characters, but the way that he brings them together, because Gale is still Gale. She wants that interview. She still has that reporter side to her. And I saw the cracks there when Sydney was like, look, I'm not happy with this. But the first time you see the two, there's camaraderie. She's happy to see her. And I want to mention that one bit where she says about Tatum, like she was the last person she ever trusted. And you can see the glimpse really subtly in Gale's face that she's a bit hurt by that. And to me, that's beautiful because it shows that Dewey's gone. Yes, she's got a new family, but ultimately, Gale is Sydney's ride or die, whether she likes it or not, and she admits it in the end. And to me, that is so important for this film because it's the heartbeat. Yeah, people will say, no, it's Sydney and Tatum. I disagree. I actually think it's Gale and Sydney more so. And maybe they'll explore Tatum and Sydney in the next film, which hopefully we will get. But you know what? I actually put that relationship right at the top, the pinnacle of that film, and that is the heart of that movie for me, Gale and Sydney.
And isn't it so satisfying to sit here and say that? Like the fact that Kevin spent the time with them and invested in them that much that we're sitting here willing to say this is more important than even Sydney and her daughter. For me, I think it's both. Both relationships are really important, and it's about Sydney's relationship with each of them in a way, and even Mark to an extent. Like it's about both of these things. But like you have Gale and Sydney, and you have Tatum and Sydney. It's so deep and it's so perfect, and it's just like I made thousands of posts over the last 3 years about the importance of Sydney and Gale individually together and like the reign of Courtney Cox and Neve Campbell over this franchise. And I feel like Scream 7 completely, fully delivered on that promise. I have to say, Amar, for both Sydney and Gale, I literally have no notes. I have nothing bad to say about individual, like, Sydney's character development, Gale's character development, but also the relationship. Like, it is completely satisfying to me, everything that's done here, even with Gale not being in the finale. And it doesn't really bother me because the finale is about Sydney's family. It's a Mark, being there, and Tatum is not lost on me. It's both. It's not just like just Tatum is there. Mark is there too, and he's bleeding out. Like, that's very powerful. So I completely agree with you.
I agree with you, Ryan, and I can't wait to talk about the finale a bit later, and especially the dynamics. I mean, to be honest with you, you know what, Mark, I think we need to talk about Mark a bit more in a minute because I really like the character. I think you see, the thing with this film is there is a lot of heart to it, I must admit. And I said, yeah, there's obviously Gail and Sydney and obviously the Mark dynamic, but I liked some people were mourning beforehand that, oh, why do we have to have a mother-daughter relationship where they're not talking, they don't really see eye to eye. But I was sold on that. I completely understood why Sydney is the way she is and why Tatum is the way she is. Because obviously she's a teenager, her mother's not going to open up, but no one gets what Sydney has been through except Gail more than Sydney. So I felt that, those dynamics were handled really well, in my opinion. And I've never seen much of Isabel May. My daughter was so happy when Isabel May was cast, just the same way she was with Jenna Ortega. So it's all these Gen Z people. So I thought Isabel May was really, really good in it, to be honest. And I think going forward, if she gets the material, she could be quite a character to look out for.
So let's talk Tatum. I want to ask you, was Tatum who you expected her to be? Did she surprise you? Not even taking Isabel out of it. I mean, you can't because, the performance is excellent and effortless. But, was she what you were expecting as a character as Sydney's daughter, or was it a bit different in execution?
That's a very interesting question. I guess I never really gave it much thought beforehand. I was happy to see that, she has a daughter. And I just want to quickly segue into the other part. I'm so glad that they showed the image of the younger two girls because people were moaning, oh, well, how can she be 17 when in Scream 5, and all that crap. So I'm like, well, they don't have to mention this daughter all the time. She probably had her in Scream 4. But I thought the character was fantastic. I thought, originally, I was a bit annoyed by her just because it was that whiny teenager that's not listening to her mum. And because we know who Sidney Prescott is, we're like, damn girl, listen to your mother. She knows what's going on. But I liked her. I liked her a lot. I mean, before she was cast, I was like, oh, they should have had McKenna Grace as the daughter because I'm such a big fan of McKenna Grace. I mean, but anyway, Isabel May, the character, fantastic. I loved it. I love the fact that it seems like in Sydney's life, trauma brings people together. It's just the way it is, right? Death follows her and people, I mean, look at her and Gail, look at everybody else. So the character of Tatum, she grew on me the more I saw her, because obviously she's the whiny teenager that doesn't listen. And as she goes along, she gets really smart. Obviously we have the red herring in the car with the boyfriend, but look how quick she reacts to, you could be the killer, and she gives no shits, and that's Sidney Prescott in the making, because that's what Sidney Prescott was like in the first Scream film. So by the end, I was like, yeah, this character is going to go far. I'm going to give you what I've seen so far with a very fast-paced film. But there's that bit even after McKenna Grace's death where, he's not coming with us, and that face that she gives her, and I was just like, tone it down, girl. But you know what? She has a lot to live up to because Neve Campbell is good at nuances, as we both know.
No, she does. And I do want to move over to Mark here, but just as a wrap up on Tatum and Isabel, I think that there's a lot of potential here. I think that she's going to be known as like the kind of breakout star from this movie. Every movie has kind of like an infamous like non-trio person who is kind of like the face of the movie, and I think it's obviously going to be her. And even within Scream, I just hope that, in Scream 8 and 9, and I've been thinking about this and I've been worried about this, because as Scream 7 is making all this money, and it really is kind of like, it's amazing how Scream 7 is just punching through all of the forces that are working against it in terms of film critics, in terms of the boycott, in terms of everything. And it's just like, it's unstoppable in some respects. And it's just like, obviously, Scream 8 is going to happen, probably 9. And I hope that they don't just completely pivot to Tatum without regard for Sydney. I don't want that. I want Sydney to still be really important, even if Tatum is kind of the more of the focus of 8.
So there's a couple of things I just wanted to touch on here. The first thing is I don't think with Neve, because obviously I saw the interview with Kevin and Neve, and they were like, well, when Kevin said, oh, at 3 a.m., me and Neve were just, talking about what ideas for 8 could be, and we think we have something good. So I don't think they would ever sideline Sydney. Kevin wouldn't. Anyway, I don't think he would. And as far as the Scream 7 thing is, I don't want to get into all the politics of it, right? So they do what they do. But what surprises me more than the boycotters is the critics. I don't understand what they're thinking when they're watching this film. They clearly don't have the same hat on as we do when it comes to a Scream film. Because I saw an interview today, and it was a British guy, and he was just like, why are they even making another Scream film? They should have stopped at 5. And I'm like, because fans want it,
Do they say that about Jurassic Park? Do they say that about any of the fucking Marvel movies? I'm sorry, that's so fucking like.
Yeah, but
How dare they?
The last Jurassic Park made money just because of its brand. It's a poor film, the one with Scarlett Johansson in.
Yeah.
Like, it's really bad, and yet people are like, "Oh, no, 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 let's make another one because that made money," whatever. This at least has a story. But no, I just, like I said to you before, I want it to do well. I've always been a Scream. Well, I've watched Scream from the first one back in the day, so I will always be ride or die with Scream, anyways.
Well, so you mentioned Mark Evans, and this is not the Mark that we were promised or expecting, through, over the first like year or so of production and like, the I would say the announcements. And the first year of the announcement, we were still expecting Patrick Dempsey, and we got a different Mark, and you seem to really like him. And people, I will say that's been like one of the underrated things that I haven't been emphasizing him, but other people have in their reviews on the show. So, what are your thoughts on Mark?
Mark Kincaid who is what I'm going to say. Honestly, Ryan, honestly, hear me out because, that sounds good because of Scream 3 and everything, but this Mark is so different to what Mark Kincaid was. This guy seems like I'm not saying the other one couldn't have been, but, and again, forgive me, I've forgotten the name of the actor that
Joel
plays him.
McHale.
There we go, Joel McHale. I thought that everything about his performance it was so lived in and it wasn't over the top, like a perfect father figure, because he even tells Sydney, well, this one's on you. Like, he's not this overbearing father that's a copper. He is just letting everything happen because he knows, what the daughter needs and he knows what the mother needs. And but the great thing about him was that when he needed to be this, protective figure, he was there. He didn't give a shit. He lunged at Ghostface every time. And there was just something about his characteristics that I related to so much. He's like this, he's a police officer. He gets on the scene. He's empathetic. He's good. He's kind. He's romantic with Sydney. I loved that Sydney was getting that moment of romance herself. The way that they play off each other was really cute. And ultimately, he's just this man that is there to protect everyone, but is just a normal human. And I love that he wasn't over the top, which I think maybe Patrick Dempsey would have played it totally differently, even if it was written this way. So I think the actor that they chose was fantastic. And I don't know why. Every time he was on screen, like when he got stabbed up, bro, I was devastated. Like, I was like, he's not surviving this, right?
Well, just to say this, Scream is defined by the women. I mean, in the longevity of the franchise, as the franchise continues to go on, especially because we lost Dewey, Sydney and Gail are running the clock. And, Tatum is obviously a great new character that's rising. Mindy she vastly improved, in my opinion, from 5 to 6 to here. And, even in this film, it was a female Ghostface. So, I mean, Scream has always been a feminist franchise. It's always been a woman first franchise. And I love that's one of the things I love about it. But, with Chad in 6, Chad in here kind of, but really he with Joel McHale, I think he really provides kind of a male energy that it's necessary to any movie. I'm sorry, like, even Charlie's Angels had Bosley, you know what I mean? So I think that, like, what you're discussing, and like I think it's a positive male imprint on Scream. I think he's a positive character. Everything that you said about him and his personality is so on point. And you're right. Patrick Dempsey would have played him as brooding, as dark, and that's who Kincaid was. But I think for this moment in time, the Sydney that we know and love, I think it's better for her to have someone like Joel McHale. And like, he felt very human and lived in within the family. The family felt like a family. I don't know about you, but like I felt
100%.
like this was like
100%.
it was like they lived together for a month, before filming. That's how connected they all felt.
Yeah, and I like what you said because I've always said that Scream is a feminist film and so it should be, but just because it is, it doesn't mean that all the male characters have to be toxic or the killers or negative. So like you said, I like the fact that he was there and he brought that energy, and I also like the fact that most times, like with Dewey or anyone else, Ghostface just overpowers everyone, literally. But with this guy, he
fought back.
He twice.
Effectively, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I was so worried that, the bit where when Sydney and the daughter escape and Ghostface goes downstairs, I was so worried that he would get stabbed there.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, and I'm glad they didn't do it there because I was like, you know what, this guy, he's a cop for a reason. So obviously he's had his training and he was on fire. So yeah, I liked it. I was like, rooting for him all the way through.
Can I just say, you know what's something that no one is really talking about now, but everyone was talking about with Scream 6? The fact that there were 4 returning survivors. If you count Mark and Tatum as like important characters, none of the important characters died. And Mark is the closest one to getting a death scene, but it's done in such a way where it didn't feel over the top and obnoxious, and it didn't feel like a fake death scene. And I think, again, like, this is the criticism of 6, that nobody died. It's not that nobody died. It's that nobody, was put in a situation where they were, like practically dead, but then miraculously came back to life. And I think that's the difference between 5 and 6. And like, honestly, for my money, if I could change one thing about Scream 7, it would be for Chad and Mindy to have just not been stabbed at the bar, or have any injury. I think, like, after Scream 6, because they did the right thing with Gail by putting her out of harm's way, out of any action. I think that focusing on her character, her emotions, the investigation, and her relationship with Sydney was the right thing. And with Chad and Mindy, I almost wish that they wouldn't have been touched by the knife, just for the principle of it. But even so, how they were slashed this time, it was child's play compared to what happened in the previous film.
100%. I mean, I'm with you on that. I didn't want either of them to be injured, but when they were injured, I was like, okay, it's just one stab each, like a slice to the stomach and a stab in Scream terms, that's just like a scratch, isn't it, really?
But you know what I mean? Like,
no, 100%. They even referenced it himself. Chad was like, look, listen, I don't want to be stabbed this time, because it's ridiculous. As much as I love Chad in 6, he should never have survived that. No chance on earth that he would have survived that. But he's here, so you know what, we'll ride with that. But I agree with you, and I like that. You're right. No one has actually come. I've just looked now. I've been looking at different reviews. No one has said, why have none of the legacy characters been killed off? So that's a positive.
And I think that to bring it up even is just more of a relic of 6. It's a reaction of 6. Like, it's like Scream 6 did this, so what is Scream 7 doing? And it's just like Scream 7 by itself is not asking the question. It's not posing the question. It's a kind of a natural thing for Gail and Chad and Mindy to just not really be in so much peril. And even so, like, because there was a big hoopla, including you and Josh Carr, about the trailer with Mark and his attack, which, by the way, can I just say, that attack happened way earlier than I thought. That feels like that happened at the halfway point, and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah. So okay, so I was sat, I had a friend to my left and my daughter to my right, and when the rattling happens, and I was like, nah, this can't be where it happens, because there's so much more to come yet. And when it did happen, my daughter looked at me and I looked at her. Honestly, I thought he was dead. Like, I was like, this is devastating. I was like, and Sydney has no idea because she's ringing her husband, like, where are you? And I'm like, oh my God, when she finds out he's dead, this is not good. And for once, when someone gets stabbed that many times and he's not dead, I was actually quite enthralled. I was like happy. I was like, yes.
They stabbed him enough to make him incapacitated, but not enough to kill him. And I think that that was part of the plan. The whole shtick with Sydney this time is to kind of go at her through her family. So had it just, because they could have easily just done Tatum in the finale, like Tatum tied up to the chair and that's it, no Mark. But the fact that they brought Mark out, that to me just felt like this really is about Sydney's family. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the whole centerpiece here. It's in her house, both her daughter and her husband. She's witnessing this. The two people that she cares about most in this world are being completely torn apart physically because of her, and the threat that either of them could die. That was so emotional and intense.
Well, see, okay, so there's a scene where Tatum is in the theater at school, but she's like in the basement, and you see Ghostface in the background. And at one point, I got so irritated by that. I was like, why has he not done anything there? And then when you see the finale and what they're trying to do, then it made sense. I was like, okay. Because normally for that kind of thing, I would be like, oh, come on, did you need to show Ghostface? But it all made sense that how easy it was for Ghostface to get Tatum, but at the moment it's no. Let's draw Sydney out, let's start killing people, and then we'll come and get the family. So I liked that, and I agree with what you're saying. The whole emotional bit there was fantastic, and that, I suppose, why the killers were playing with her.
Well, and going on this, I kind of want to know here about the finale. What are your thoughts? And it's hard to even say motive, because for me, I don't think it's about a specific motive. I don't think Anna Kemp's character is after greed, or she's not jealous. She's not trying to get revenge. She's not trying to get famous. She is a crazy person who just happened to intersect with Sydney, and she has an obsession with Sydney because of that. And it's so much more psychological and less so about like a specific 3-point plan.
Okay, prior to this, you and I discussed on one of the episodes, and I said to you, look, when it comes to motives, how many great motives are they going to really have? Right. So I have to overlook that, because for me, the motive is quite weak, actually. But Anna Camp, I felt, And maybe it's because of the rubbed mascara when she takes a mask off or her tears. She looks psychotic. Like, she actually looks like she's an insane person. The problem I have with the finale is that, for me, it felt really quick. And, Ethan Embry, I mean, literally, what the heck? Who is he? What's his motive? What's he there for? How is he?
Well, I could say the same thing about Amber. I could say the same thing about Stu. I could say the
No, no,
same thing about Charlie
Yeah,
Walker.
okay, but Charlie Walker, Amber Freeman, and Stu Mocker have so much screen time. There's a lot of development for these characters. So when they turn up, you at least know who they are. And then you and I had a phone conversation, and I was like, come on, Ryan, don't stop clutching at straws. He had that scene, I get it, beforehand, where at the insane asylum. But I wasn't invested. When he got shot dead, I was like, good, because you don't bring anything to this finale. It's all about Anna Camp's character. Is it Jesse, I think?
Jessica,
That's it. So I thought she was great. I really did. The
And-
motive was way for thin, in my opinion.
Can I just ask, about for me, the thing I love about Anna Camp and Ethan Embry, I hear your point. I think it's valid. Personally, I disagree. I love the fact that there are two adult killers here. And I think that with him, it's kind of something new, I mean, not something new, but it reminds me of a Wes Craven kind of original trilogy killer where, they are in it less, but still it's something new to only have a killer who we just see for one scene or one long extended scene. And I think that part of his motive is the Stu obsession. If you listen to that conversation, I know you've only seen it once, but when you see the movie again, listen to whenever he talks to Sydney and Gail. He talks about Stu. He lies to them and says that, yes, there's this guy who looked like Stu who lived in the insane asylum. He was obsessed with Stu too. I think that I think he's also kind of crazy. So I think that at the end of the day, and this is kind of a fresh thing for a Scream movie to do, is there is no secret brother. There is no cousin. There is no mother of your ex-boyfriend, all of which I love, all of which I have built this podcast on. It's my entire heart of Scream. But the thing that I love about Scream 7 is these are kind of just random, crazy people who are obsessed with Sydney or, obsessed with her in a certain way and have this weird, almost inexplicable understanding of her and obsession with her and hate and weird hatred of her, weird admiration of her, wanting to be her. That the fact that it's random, crazy people actually kind of makes more sense to real life compared to I have a specific motive of revenge. Again, since we've already been through the original trilogy, I think it's actually quite fresh and almost innovative. Even Richie and his family, they were retreads of things that we've seen before. This is something completely fresh and new, and I think that's why people are struggling to understand it, because by Scream terms, we're used to a motive with an explanation and a reasoning and a PowerPoint slide presentation of it, and this is something completely different and almost more true to life in some respects. If someone was gonna, because I experience this as a podcast host, there are crazy people out there who just become obsessed with me, and the image of me or what they think of me and things I've never even interacted with this person yet. It's just all in their head, and I think that's what we're seeing in Jessica.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that completely. I agree with you completely on that sense that it is innovative, but it's just that, okay. I know what your thoughts are on all the finales, but I want to know toxic fandom or what Jessica says. Which is the better motive in your opinion? Knowing that what's been happening since Scream 6, 7, and all the Melissa Brera stuff, what is it that you think is a better motive and why?
Honestly, as a storytelling thing, and you may not get it because you only saw it once, but when you see it again and you see Anna Camp's delivery and her explanation, there is a lot there. There is at least 2 or 3 times as much that she talks about that contributes to her why she's doing this than just Richie saying, he loved the stab movies and toxic fandom. How can fandom be toxic? There are maybe 2 or 3 lines in Scream 5 about this that kind of shape the finale, but the toxic fandom is in Scream 5. It's kind of it is a great reason, but it's kind of surface level. Whereas here, I do think that there's more depth and more to discuss, and there's more substance coming from the actual film, not just the discourse, if that makes sense. So I'm honestly going to say Scream 7, even though, but this is a good question. The Scream 5 finale, which I adore, I adore that finale, compared to Scream 7, I don't know. I would probably say that they're equal. Unfortunately, this finale for 7 isn't going to touch the Wes's finales, but I would be lying to say that I didn't like it. I really liked this finale. Whenever I was watching it last night, I was really I was really happy when the finale came. I was looking forward to it. I was so enjoying the reveal and her speech. And I was in awe of her acting. And again, it's just a different type of finale. It feels shorter and leaner and more to the point because that's how the rest of the movie is. There's no fat on the rest of the movie. So why would the finale all of a sudden be extended and longer when the rest of the movie wasn't? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean completely, but I just feel that that then takes away from everything. Because I get what you're saying. The film is lean, it's very crisp. Like I said, for me, though, it's a bit underbaked in certain places. And I felt that the finale, honestly, Ryan, and weirdly, I went yesterday and I rewatched the fifth one just because I was trying to compare the toxic fandom to this one to see. Because obviously, let's forget about six. That motive is just poor, even though I do like the finale in some ways. But 5 and 6 is the one that I was comparing because I was like, okay, which one do I prefer? Which one has, And when I watched 5 yesterday, and maybe it has the Sidney Prescott and the Gale teaming up and the separate Jenna Ortega bit, and I realized I think for now, for me, 7 is slightly inferior, and to me it was just like over really quick, and I was just like, I wanted a bit more. Or maybe that's because I'm so used to having such long, drawn-out finales, 1, 2, 3, even 4.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I need to watch it again to give a proper analysis of it. Camp, I will say, plays that deranged character so perfectly. She saves the finale for me in the sense that I didn't like Ethan Embry at all.
You didn't think he was scary or a good
He
actor?
was he was scary because when he takes the mask off, he almost does that
Twitch?
click with his neck,
Yeah.
that Gary Oldman does in Leon, which was phenomenal. So I get that, but because we saw him in one scene, I mean, okay, people can argue that Mrs. Loomis was hardly in it, but Mrs. Loomis had so much depth to her at the end. She had so much to do that it kind of made up for the lingering scenes, and she's in more than one scene anyway. So, and again, like I said, I am being picky on purpose because I've seen it once, and to me, it was like, well, that was too quick. Like, where the
Yeah.
hell do we have enough time to really process what's going on? But yeah, no, I honestly, I'm going to put 7 below 5 at the moment. But again, like I might change my mind. I probably will.
So, but okay, so if one were to put the finale of 5 over the finale of 7, I can understand that. I'm not sure if I agree with it. To me, they both have a really great finale. They're both kind of duking it out for me right now. And like, again, we are so obsessive Scream people. We're going to live with this stuff and we're not going to really make up our minds, probably not for months, right? About a lot of these things in a firm way. But in terms of like the rest of the film, like I just would be shocked that Amar Karim would watch the first act of Scream 7 with the opening that you love, Sydney's life, the theater scene, the attack at Sydney's house, the Gale Weathers of it all, the investigation, even that first hour, and look at that first hour compared to the first hour of Scream 5, which doesn't feature the trio really, or I guess Gale and Sydney, and think, yeah, Scream 5 is better.
No, but okay, but you see, they're totally different films because they weren't about the trio at that first hour. It was about introducing these new characters and this new story and this new arc. So in comparison, I think it's unfair to compare them in that way because this is a Sidney Prescott film. It's come back to the original characters, right? So we're obviously going to have more of a pull towards Sidney Prescott and towards Gale Weathers. And what I'm saying is, up until where Gale Weathers comes, I'm not saying that it's poor in any way. All I'm saying is that these characters in here, which we haven't touched upon, are just there to be killed. And that's unfortunate for me because even though the characters are there, you need to give them something. The death scene for McKenna Grace is fantastic. Like, it was really brutal.
Yeah.
But leading up to that, I was like, but who is she? What do we know about it? There's nothing. People moan about Cece Cooper, but Cece Cooper was given the film class and then she was given a full montage to go around that house, but she served no purpose to Scream except being killed off, so I get that. And I'll apologize because people used to moan about Cece Cooper and I used to moan about Sarah Darling. Scream 7 has made me appreciate Sarah Darling, put it that way, because,
you're
at
right,
least,
though. McKenna Grace, we know literally nothing about her other than she's her friend, she's having a party, and that she's playing the lead in the play, and that she's kind of a diva. But does it matter? This is a
No.
slasher.
No, but okay, I get that. But then this is the same argument that us Scream fans have had about previous films, or even like, what's the name of the girl that dies? Olivia. People are like, oh, well, she's not in it, so why should we care about her? But people moaned about that. Oh, we don't get enough time with Olivia. She's a nothing character. So I could say the same about, especially the fact that McKenna Grace was robbed of a character in Five Nights at Freddy's, and I felt that she was robbed here. The scene moment where, when the guy behind the curtain is killed off screen, and she's being thrown up and down, and she says something. She's like, "Okay, I want to get out of this." That one single line that she delivers was so well. I felt for her. I was like, this girl is a really good actress, and I think Kevin underused her because she sold that in that 1 minute. I was like, oh my God, she's petrified. She knows that something shit's going to go down. And then when she sees him, she's like, what the fuck? And I was like, you should have just given her a bit more. But that, again, that is just me complaining because the film went by so quick. Like I said, had I watched this a second time, I might have had a different opinion. But by that time, realistically, it's like, who is Hannah?
Well, and she's the worst. I'm sorry. Like, of the new characters, she is the least that's developed. She has the best death scene in terms of the visual, and I'm gonna just touch upon that with you too. Is like the visuals of the death scenes, which are all fantastic. And something that Radio Silence didn't really do, and so even in some ways even better than Wes Craven in terms of making a big visual like picture of like each of the death scenes. Really, really good stuff. But in terms of Hannah, I will say she's probably the least developed character. Asa German, Jessica's son, Celeste O'Connor's character, and Sam Reckner, I do think that they all get enough detail colored in where I could probably talk about them, but McKenna Grace, like because she's the first victim, and there's just not a lot to her, which is fine for me because I'm taking into account that this is a slasher, and like slashers are supposed to have kind of like characters like this that get offed. And I'm also a Scream 3 person, and in some ways a 4 person, where I don't really care about Tyson, and I don't really care about Angelina, and I don't care about the cops outside of Kate's house. And, so I do grant you that it's valid criticism, especially for McKenna Grace. Compared to CC Cooper, I think that shows the flaw, but it's not something I'm emphasizing in my thing,
no. And again, like I said to you, I get, what do they say? Cannon fodder. I mean, I get why certain characters are there, but sometimes you just need, and maybe because we've been blessed with Wes Craven, right? Because, he gives us so much depth with CC Cooper, who realistically serves no purpose to that story. And yeah, Sarah Darling a bit more, but now when I look back at Sarah Darling, you said it yourself, oh, but that's a character with a lot of spunk, and Hannah had nothing.
Yeah,
So in that, I'm purposely criticizing it because she's a fantastic actress. She looks really good, and the death scene was crazy, like absolutely crazy. And what I noticed was, and I had to go back and check the trailer, was the shot where she's dangling all twisted in the wires. In the trailer, they don't show the guts, do they? Because when I watched it in the film, I was like, oh, there's guts hanging out here. I didn't see that in the trailer, so I was like, oh, obviously they're not gonna show that. But it looked really good, and the light setting and everything. So the death scene is really good, but again, it's over before it starts. That's how fast it felt. So I was a bit disappointed in that.
And I would argue that like a lot of those of Tatum's friends, I think that there is some characterization there. It's just subtle because the movie is lean by design and moving at a fast pace. And again, we're just so not used to that as Scream fans. I think Kevin actually is kind of ballsy for giving us a movie that is super lean where their other movies weren't, and giving us a motive that is so off the beaten path from what we're used to for the Scream motive. So in a lot of ways, Scream 7, no wonder is kind of getting met with resistance in some respects, even taking the politics out of it and the reviews out of it. If people do find it divisive, I could understand it because it is kind of a revolutionary film in some ways as a Scream film within this franchise. But, I'm going to make a big statement here, okay? And I can't believe I'm saying this. I think that the images that Kevin creates with the death scenes are better than Wes Craven's. I mean, and this is hard to say, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe Scream 1 would etch it out. What Wes created with the image of Casey Becker hanging from the tree and Tatum from the garage, I feel like Kevin does that with almost every single kill. Every single kill has like this kind of like poetic, violent, horrific visual that's attached to it, but that's very beautiful and it looks like a painting in a way. Not only McKenna Grace, but Asa German in the bar, Celeste O'Connor in the bar, and a camp with how her face kind of falls off her. There's just such beauty in these kills in this movie. As a director, I think this is like, he had a very interesting approach, which was to kind of give us such intentional visuals with the deaths.
I can't argue with that because, obviously with Wes Craven and time and, the fact that so many years have gone and visuals have improved and everything. I'll give you that much. But the only problem I have is there was a lot of CGI, and it showed. On the first viewing, it showed, especially with the face falling off. It was great. Don't get me wrong. It was like mental. How no one's ever thought of that before, but it was almost very Mortal Kombat. The way that it just flies off. And even with the elements of it, I'm really excited to watch it another time. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see it again. And if it was that bad, I wouldn't be that excited despite being a Scream fan. I would still watch it, like I said to you at the beginning of this episode. But now I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to see all of that again, because this time I'll take it in a lot more, and then
Yeah.
I'll have a lot more time with it. So I just need to go back and appreciate it more the way you appreciate it. Because some of the things you're saying, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't feel that way right now, but I
Well,
think I will when I've seen it.
so there are specific things about it that are really great, that you may not have appreciated on the first time, and I guarantee that you'll see those, and then the Sydney and Gale, it doesn't get bad. It gets richer and more fulfilling and more emotional, and Sydney and Tatum. I think that you're gonna have a really great, second amazing viewing, or at least I did, and in terms of, like, what Kevin Williamson, you mentioned to me on the phone about how great you thought the dialogue was. There are some stunningly beautiful conversations in in this film. Of course, the film ends with Sydney and Tatum talking about why she was named Tatum. I never would have expected that's how the film ended, and it's really great. So there's like the great character stuff that we're used to from Kevin, but also like some interesting, thoughtful stuff. Like Kevin, I mentioned this on some other recordings, but like he really tried to incorporate iconic visuals and iconic cinematography from other horror movies. Like we have Jaws, we have several moments of Black Christmas, we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's just I was very shocked by, and I guess Halloween, right? Because you're right. That's a Halloween reference. Things that were that feel very inspired. They don't feel cheap, and I feel like a lot of times when Radio Silence was doing things in 5 and 6, a lot of the references were like not. I don't want to say cheap because it sounds really really bad, but like, they didn't have that level of thought or intellect that Kevin is bringing to this film.
And they never were gonna, because first of all, they never even changed the script. Like, we know that Kevin has gone back and changed quite a lot of the original script because he understands the characters. And sometimes I think this has been mentioned in the podcast, in the Patreon chat. I can't remember if it was there, but sometimes I feel like were Radio Silence really as bigger fans as they claim to be, or were they just going with the flow because they'd watched the films? Because Kevin has gone out of his way to amend everything, and he's done a really good job of throwing in subtle Easter eggs. I mean, obviously we have the opening. Even with the opening, when he crawls through, I love the conversation they have because they reference it themselves. Like, oh, this is what Billy Loomis did, and this is what your mum did, and that's why I'm doing it. And because when it first started talking like that, I was like, oh, come on, what the hell? That's a direct quote from the original. And then I realized what they were playing at, so that was quite clever. And I'm wondering, was that the original script? Was that something Kevin did? But you have to give Kevin credit. He's produced so many good shows that I love. The Following, Vampire Diaries, you name it. There's so many things that he's done that I love. So I have to give him credit. I've read a lot of reviews where people are criticizing the direction, and I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah.
There's nothing in this that is edited poorly. Yeah, like I said, I still have criticism with the pace. I think it's too fast, but who knows, that might change. But I have to give Kevin credit. He isn't a director, and he's obviously been on set. He's taken note from the likes of Wes Craven and other directors that he's been around. So you have to commend him because I think he did a pretty good job, and he's brought out really good talent. Like I always said, an actor is good at their craft, but you need a good director behind them. And this is why when we complain about, is it Dermot Mulroney,
Yes.
that would Wes Craven have allowed him to do that? Would Kevin do that? So you have to give this man props for doing the right thing and obviously bringing out the talent from. He has a very good cast, but like I said, going back to it, it's slightly underbaked. So that's the only criticism I have with these new characters. But I agree with you. Even in the bar scene with Celeste and everyone else, they are given a little bit more. But again, they're just there to be killed off because the story is about Sydney, Gale, a bit more about the twins, Mark and Tatum. So I can't complain too much about it. But again, I'm being picky on purpose.
I mean, this was a really productive conversation. And again, it's a good landmark because, Amar and I are going to talk about Scream 7 for the rest of time on this podcast. So it's like, I think it's interesting to have a snapshot of what you were thinking in right after seeing it and only having seen it one time,
No, 100%. And I said to, I think one of the Patreons in the group chat, when someone said, oh, I regret my original review of Scream 6. And I said, listen, don't ever regret anything that you think of in that moment because that's how you felt. If you change your mind, good, but I'm the same. I might look back at this episode and think, what was I thinking? It's not that bad, or I shouldn't have criticized this or whatever. But in the moment, that's how I felt. So I thought, let me be true to myself. And then I knew that we are going to have some more recordings. So I'll bring my A game once I've seen the film a couple more times.
Well, Amar, thank you so much for coming. And I really hope that you enjoy the second viewing. Honestly, I was watching it, and up until the point of Tatum's chase scene, I do think that Tatum's chase scene, there is a little bit of some weird pacing there. That's up until that point, though, last night, I was thinking, holy shit, this is going to be second place for me after Scream 3. And then those feelings picked up again once Sydney kind of got back in the driver's seat of the film. But there was a part of me that I was watching it last night, I'm like, this could really be up there for me. I don't want to overreact and say, oh yes, it is number 2 over Scream 1. Like that would be irresponsible of me. But I'm really having an amazing time this weekend, and I'm going again today. I'm loving life.
Okay, well, you know what? Now that we've had this conversation, I will bump it above 5. I will, because look, listen, I said to you, and I repeat myself again, I love every single Scream film, even the poorer ones, right? I really do. I can always see the good in each of the films, despite flaws of certain actors or certain writing or certain directing choices or whatever, creative choices. But as I'm talking about this, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? It is better than 5 and 6. And to be honest with you, it might even be better than 4, but right now it isn't. Because I go back and forth with 4. I'm not sure. Sometimes I think it's the best one. Sometimes I put it below 5 and 6. So it just depends on my mood. But with 7, there's that hype there, and sometimes I felt for me the hype wasn't fully met. But we don't know. We'll see it on the second viewing. But I just want to end with saying that, people need to understand that Sidney Prescott and Neve Campbell, she's a powerhouse. And she every way through this film, I read a comment and they're like, she's past her prime. But I'm like, no, how is she every single scene she saw, she was the star. Even the scenes with Gail is fantastic. Courtney Cox is my darling. But Neve Campbell just literally hit it out of the park.
Yeah, and I mean, she literally says it. That's Sydney's big line to the killer, her one-liner. Past my prime, fuck you.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you know what? I loved that so much. But
yeah,
I'm glad that you changed. And honestly, I don't think you're going to regret saying that, because Scream 7, even for the flaws that you've mentioned, it is a sophisticated, classy movie, and I don't see Scream 5 and especially 6 as classy, sophisticated movies. 4, it's complicated because you have such an amazing killer with Jill. I think 4 is a more inconsistent movie, whereas 7 is more consistent, and I think you're going to see that when you watch it again.
Yeah, and I hope I do, because I do love the franchise. I love everything about it. I've, like, from the first recording we did back in when I said to you, the only reason I ever wanted to write was because of Kevin Williamson and Scream, and so it shaped my life in a very positive way. These characters are great. This whole journey, and I don't regret any of the films. I think every single one of them serves a purpose, and I'm glad that 7 was made.
Thank you so much for your initial thoughts here, Amar, and we will see you next time.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
Get another beer, you want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back!
Dear God, Ryan,